thank our panel members for agreeing to be on this panel for us. I do have a couple of questions that I'd like to pose to them, but if anybody in the audience has any questions for them, as you can see, we have a vast array of diversity sitting at the table. There's different levels of expertise, different levels of experience, different stories to be heard. So if at any time you will have any questions, please just signal me and I will absolutely bring the microphone over because we only have this one microphone. So one of the first questions that I have for the panel is, as a community, how can we increase our social protective factors? By that I mean, how can we increase the social protective factors for youth? What more as a community can we do to increase social protective factors? While people are thinking about that real quick, for those of you in the audience, I'm a community social psychologist, so essentially what community social psychology talks about is if we have protective factors, people have protective factors and risk factors in behavioral health. And a lot of what we see that comes into the criminal justice field or individuals that get involved with addictions is they have a lot of risk factors. But if we are able to counteract that by, as a community, increasing social factors, protective factors, then the students, the youth, have a better chance of not falling into, undesirable, yes.
So in terms of increasing protective factors, the list can be rather endless, just as a list of risk factors can be. And I think the important thing is to remember that we all, as individuals in our personal lives and as professionals in the work that we do, need to contribute to improving the protective factors for individuals and decreasing the risk factors. So we all need to make a change in every way possible. As communities are in crisis, we tend to think about change as being something big and revolutionary that needs to happen immediately and to have a huge significant impact. But really, for it to work, it's going to be slow progress, and it's only going to work if we're all contributing, doing our piece, personally and professionally. So in order to decrease risk factors, we need to help increase the protective factors of people. So educate a child, spend time with a child, talk to your neighbors, get to know who they are, be a person of support for them, do something positive in every level of your life, your own life, your home, your children's lives, your neighborhood, your community. That's the way to increase protective factors and decrease those risk factors. It takes a long time, but if we all do it, that's how the change will be made and sustained.
I agree.
They all agree.
I think we could have things like healthy challenges where the high school took on the Methuen Police Department in a softball game, and the town came out, where we could get the kids talking to the police and the younger kids in our families involved. Just some interaction between the different age groups, because it's like we lock them in school and then we don't see them all day, and you can't get in there to talk to them, and they're like in a separate world. And it would be nice to mix them in with the rest of the folks in the community after school sometime.
You ever heard the word that you're only as strong as your weakest link? And I'm sorry, you can take the military out of the man, but you can't take the military out of the man. So I'm only as strong as my weakest link. So in other words, everyone here in this panel, like she stated, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Deanna stated, a lot of times we just need to have low ego admissions and work together, because at the end of the day, we have the same common goal, and that's common good. Right? And it's not going to happen unless leaders get together, right, and come up with solutions to a very complex matter. What I've always noticed is we're all CEOs, executive directors here, program managers, and if we can't come together and come up with a solution to this, then none of us belong being CEOs, executive directors, or program managers. I think that it's going to be healthier, like they said, working together as a community and tackle this, really, all of us together, and come up with these ideas and hopefully solutions that will protect these kids much further than they are today. And so I hope to be working with everybody here, and I think that's a big focus of mine this year. Last year we did like a flag football event in the area. We had kids from 8 years old to about 17. This year I am honored and say that we have New England Patriots that are going to be involved with this year's event. So stuff like you're saying, get your kids out, get the parents out, get them involved. It's huge. It's really, really huge. So.
You know, I think just to reiterate, staying connected with your children and with other members of the community, whether it's through school or through sports or through theater or some other healthy activities, and highlighting that it's cool to do those things. You know, not focusing on it's cool to smoke or it's cool to drink, that they're some stuff that their friends might say, but highlighting how cool it is to stay in school and how cool it is to choose healthy activities and sports and be with your friends. That's really important. You know, and we know that the kids are always on social media, so making sure that there's more announcements and more highlights on social media about being cool with the right activities.
I agree.
Yeah, you could have mother-daughter paint nights or father-son wood carving classes or something to get these generations working together again.
I think we all agree with everything everyone is saying. I'd just like to share that what the Sheriff's Department has in place right now is a youth academy. And anybody can go onto the website and get the information, but basically it's for youth from 8 to 11-year-olds and 12 to 15-year-olds. And there's a lot going on. It's like a summer camp. So they go for 1 week. There are team building activities, education around drug and alcohol abuse and prevention. And it's a nice way to get kids involved in doing something positive.
And I think it's great to have representatives show up at these events. That shows us that they're listening, and we really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So I think that our community provides a lot of services educationally and correctively, such as Teen Al-Anon, and our schools enforce the health classes that we're required to take. But I think a big part of the community working together to prevent things like alcohol abuse and underage drinking is working on the younger age group. So I wrote as one of my answers for preventing underage drinking that we should enforce the sports programs that we offer and the arts programs that we offer, because you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You're not going to get the seniors who are smoking necessarily to just put an end to it when we say it's not good for you. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So I think that although those services are useful, they're provided, and they are taken very seriously, I think what we need to do is make sure that the upcoming generations and the kids who are our youth right now in our community know that there's things that are positive. Instead of just throwing in their face that drugs are bad, alcohol's bad, they know that. They see that, they hear it, and they listen to it. But at some point, it's just gonna fly by their head because they hear it so much. So I think what we need to do is enforce and stress the positivity that our community is willing to provide, such as sports and arts.
Sarah, that's excellent, and thank you for bringing that up. And I just want the audience to also hear, when you say the younger generation, about what age and grade in school are you talking about?
I'm really talking about any grade, any age, but specifically, middle schoolers. We offer SAD at the middle schools, and they understand and they hear that drugs are bad, don't drink, but that's not necessarily going to have the biggest impact on their lives, at least I believe. So if we focus on, it's statistically shown that athletes, students who do better in school, students who are in the fine arts programs, they are less likely to do drugs, they are less likely to do alcohol, and that's a fact. You can't really argue with that. So I think what we need to do is enforce what we have and what we know and put it to use for the underage kids, because I feel like that's the best way to prevent something like the devastation of drinking and drugs.
Thank you.
Good point.
Part of what we do with our prevention services is to attempt to implement curriculum in the school departments. And research has shown that prevention curriculum should start as early as preschool. Isn't that crazy? As early as preschool. Now, some people get frightened when they hear, what? Substance abuse prevention in preschool? The thing is, you're not talking about substances to preschoolers and elementary school children. The curriculum in those early years is geared towards making positive life choices. So in those very early years, it's teaching kids how to have self-esteem, how to speak up, how to stand up for themselves, and learn positive decision-making, which then translates into the curriculum develops throughout the lifespan. And it's not until middle school that they actually start learning about substances. So the research is very clear that children need to be learning early on, from preschool on. So, I 100% agree. If we're waiting until high school to tell a senior in high school, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, then we have failed in terms of prevention. And we, LMCC, are actively trying to implement one curriculum in particular. It's called Life Skills. It's the gold standard for prevention curriculum. We're trying to implement that in the 5 communities we work with in the Merrimack Valley. And if anybody would like more information about that, I would love to talk to you about that.
We need to educate parents too. Otherwise, they go home and.
I was gonna say something.
No,
So
she's good.
I think that not just educating the kids, we should be educating the parents, like you said. A lot of, I know, from my experiences, I know a lot of kids go to school, they learn about drug and alcohol abuse, and they think nothing of it. They're like, oh yeah, whatever. And then they go home, and their parents are not teaching them about anything. I think we should not just have youth centers. I think we should have, parents and different guardians go to different groups to try to prevent their children and teach their children about what's right and what's wrong, because a lot of people I know have parents that don't really care as much as other parents would, and they just let their children do whatever, and some even encourage drug and alcohol abuse. So I think it would help a lot if the parents are encouraging their kids to do right things.
Thank you.
I'd like to just also add, I think events like this are very important, where all parts of the community come together and discuss these issues.
And also, Saj, if you don't mind just taking a couple of minutes, you probably don't need the mic, of what we do here in the community. We do different compliance checks and things like that. If you don't mind just speaking to the audience about what we do as a community here.
Sure, here in Methuen, obviously the police enforce alcohol laws as set forth by the state. But here in town, we also, we do compliance checks, which, with local alcohol establishments, which consist of undercover officers and what we call junior operatives, and it's basically a sting operation. We try to go into liquor stores and see if people are selling to minors, and if they do, obviously, we go forward to the licensing board and, go forward with that and see what we can do with the alcohol license.
Beautiful, thank you, Saj. So at this time, Jackie's gonna pull 2 more tickets before we go into the next question, and then we'll pull the other 2 at the end. Does the audience have any questions for the panel? Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up. I'm so glad you brought up parents. And I agree with you. I think parents are public enemy #1. I know our group, MVP ASAP, we try to reach out to parents just like you were saying. Events like this are good, but it's tough to get parents who haven't been affected. So I know we set up at a lot of family events and so forth, kind of ambush them. Does anybody have any suggestions on other ways to reach parents who haven't been affected, so that they can kind of find learn about the early warning signs for the kids and so forth like that? You don't gotta raise your hand. You're a big girl.
you were probably saying, I know what she's gonna say. Part of this is dealing with the stigma of addiction. So we all have to chip away at the stigma of addiction. Why do parents not want to come to these events? Because you hear the word addiction or substance abuse or any behavioral health issue, and you're like, oh, no, you know, that's not me. So first and foremost, we have to, each of us, chip away at the stigma of addiction. Talk about it, recognize it, acknowledge it, like it is a normal thing. It is. Everybody deals with it in some way. That's the first thing. Secondly, we have to normalize these activities in our communities, in the schools, in our workplaces. We give trainings on so many different topics. This needs to be a part of our everyday discussions. People need to become comfortable with it, and it needs to not be that, you know, glaring issue that everybody wants to avoid. Until then, we need to be a little more subtle about our marketing and integrate education around these issues into every event possible. But that involves our community partners. That involves schools, extracurricular organizations, people like the police department are doing right now, embedding education into the events that they do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the things, oh, sorry, she had a question.
I'm sorry. It's just a suggestion as well. Every Sunday night, I'm a parent of a high school and a middle school, and we get these great robocalls that let us know, what's upcoming events for the week at both schools. Maybe even throw something out there to the parents. The parents are the ones that are getting these calls, to remind them to maybe be more proactive in their children's lives, to reinforce stuff, like the drug issue and the alcohol.
That's a good point.
Beautiful, thank you.
Good point.
To every
Yeah.
parent in this community. those
Absolutely.
calls. And every night, every Sunday night we get them.
I'll talk to you, I want to talk to you before I leave then.
Okay.
I think that one of the greatest things is if we can't get individuals to your groups or groups like this, because maybe there's not enough events going on throughout the year, right? Because I'm a true believer, if you build it, they will come. Sooner or later, they will come. But I think that one of the things too, to attack it is, the school could get involved here. I think that during the teacher-parents meetings that they have, I think there should be agencies like ourselves, like yourselves, at those schools. As they're coming in, signing in, we'll hand out some literature about this and hoping that they read it and educate themselves and say, okay, well, this is a great execution and let me follow it. But if we're not, again, it's difficult. I know in my city, it's sometimes you need a note from God to get parents to.
Sometimes that doesn't work either.
No, yeah, to get parents, involved in the stuff that I do. But again, I'm persistent and I don't like to take no for an answer very much. So I just keep pounding the pavement and eventually they'll come. But we need to sometimes take the information to them wherever they're at. So we need to put more boots on ground.
We could have a hide and seek during parent night at the school, so that the parents would have that room available to see how their kids are hiding the drugs and
Hidden in plain sight.
hidden in plain sight, whatever they call it, where
That's our era.
yeah. But that way it would be presented to them, and they wouldn't have to go out of their way to see what's going on.
Yeah. Another thing, if I may, please, real quick, and I don't know if you have it, Jennifer, but it's a board. I don't think you have it. A board of all the drugs and
Oh, yeah, we have that.
everything that's around there. And a lot of parents that I've come across have never seen the cannabis plant before, so they don't know a lot of times. So again, something like that, and just keep pounding the education around it. I think eventually it'll be successful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So a couple months ago at the high school, 2 women came in, I believe they came from Harvard University, and they were offering $5 cash to any student who willingly gave or filled out, they had to bring it home and fill out and get approval. But for someone who wasn't a parent or guardian to be willing to participate in their education. So, I mean, $5 was in it, so I did it. and I had my grandfather fill it out, and he now receives my report cards. He receives things that I'm doing well in school and things that I'm struggling with. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that are willing to do this, especially grandparents and relatives that care about you, that don't necessarily have a child of their own. And he checks in on me. He sends me books that he knows that I'd like, and I actually read them because they're things that I do like. Because, I'm sorry, Miss Rubino, my English teacher, but not all the books we read are exactly to my liking. So he's done a big part to help in my education, and I really appreciate it. And I'm sure there's plenty of other students that would too. So that was just my education. Now if we did something similar to that, but we had almost like a friend or like an advisor for every student at the school, and we offered incentives, such as maybe not the $5, but some type of incentive to get kids to go home to someone and say, do you mind just checking in on me? Like, do you mind filling this out? And then they return it to school, and then we are able to push out things to help prevent situations like underage drinking to people that care. Because like they said, not all parents are willing to help their kids in that way, unfortunately, but it's true. So if we look to someone who will willingly fill this out and who says, yes, I want to help, yes, I care, then you're more likely to have someone active in their lives who's going to make a difference, because it will work.
I agree.
It's a wonderful idea. So that's almost like in the addiction world of assigning someone a sponsor or a recovery
Right.
coach or something, someone who's directly responsible. I think that's a wonderful idea. Good for you.
That big brother, big sister.
Yeah.
Or like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It probably does a lot for the older person too.
Huh?
It does a lot for the older person too.
Yes, it does.
Absolutely. That was a wonderful idea. So are there any other questions right now?
I
Go
just
ahead.
wanted to say, you know, it's a perfect example listening to the two young ladies at the end of this table. It's not just the adults and parents that have the answers. I mean, these are just spectacular examples of how to move forward and how to make it safer for the children. So always including the younger generations too is important, because we certainly don't have all of the answers. So let's bring in who it's affecting and what's going to make the most sense to them is important.
Excellent.
We have
Thank
to
you.
involve the kids. I mean, I think we've done our things in our past when we were younger, but as the years go by, there's always new, what am I looking for? Challenges. Yeah, there's always new challenges that we sometimes don't know about, and these kids have all the answers, pretty much, for that era.
Representative Campbell.
Linda, so back to Phil's point and what has been said here. In our office, even though folks don't realize that we're not care providers, we get a lot of calls in our office for care. And the thing that I would, I guess, offer is that what families that I speak to are looking for is confidentiality. So if there were any way through the school system to have an updated website that parents could go look at confidentially, and that website was made available to them through mass communication, I think that is something that would be very helpful, because a lot of parents want to be able to just click on that and see where I can go to get care for my child. So I would just throw that out there, and it requires a lot of work, but I think that a lot of parents would avail themselves of that, and it would also make all of what you're offering available to them as well in a confidential setting.
We actually just created that, and the website address is on our brochure, which is at the table by the door, and it's updated monthly with resources available locally to the Merrimack Valley as well as statewide, so parents can find, and individuals for themselves as well, can find treatment options for any level of care at any time, and you can also, as a provider, update your own information and put more information in. So please do take one of our brochures.
Absolutely, thank you.
Hi, this is I'm from the next town over. I saw the article in the paper yesterday about this, and that's why I'm here. And I'm here as a member of the Merrimack community. My 4 children are just out of high school now. I'm part of a lot of the issues that had happened here and I'm part of the solution now. What the representative said, though, touches on what I wanted to ask is, it's all about communication. I mean, having all programs are great, but having people knowing about the programs is the disconnect. I'm from North Andover, sorry. So I know that in our town, I had talked a lot about this kind of a forum, and I don't know, Methuen, how much about, besides what's in the newspaper that I saw, did the kids know about, did the parents know about? You know, the communications that go out, like we were talking about earlier, or all the kids are on, you know, on their texts. Sorry, that's Texas. You know, how much of the school into that? You know, I know my kids were once in a while on the North Andover school website. Well, if this was coming up in North Andover, maybe a blast went out to the kids. Definitely blast go out to the parents. Going out to maybe, again, the confidentiality, the different Alateen meetings, or the Al-Anon, or the AA meetings, or the different groups around this area. You got a good turnout here, all right? I know probably 100 times more that's in this room of people that are in the problem right now, in Methuen, in North Andover, who parents or kids that aren't here. They probably choose not to be here. And the last thing I just want to say is, because you were touching upon, which I think has been phenomenal, is that this, you know, quote unquote, you know, stigma we have, the newspapers and the representatives this last couple of years, and our governor, have been talking about it and calling it a disease. And it's a disease like every other disease. You have cancer, you have, you know, anything like that, you have alcoholism, you have drug addiction, it's all the same, you know. And you know, we talk about and we joke around that we don't have to pay a $25 copay to get well. You know, we go to meetings and pay $1. It's a lot easier to do that. But it's talking about it and getting it out there. So this is unbelievable, this kind of a forum, but getting it into the hands of the information through text, or web, or blast, or phone calls, to get more people out. But just so you know, whoever had put it in the newspaper, you know, brought me to this kind of a thing. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just a suggestion and maybe opening this up for conversation among the panelists. I am a former SAD student. I actually just graduated with my master's, but I'm really proud to see Sarah and Corey up there. SAD in the high school does a kind of an ambassadorship program with SAD in the middle school. So high school students go down and kind of talk to and participate in events with SAD students in the middle schools. And so I'm wondering what you think the effectiveness would be of kind of a community-wide ambassadorship program between successful and clean and happy high school students like Sarah and Corey and so many of our SAD students in community-wide events. So maybe somebody who was previously in Methuen Little League who has been a very successful high school student and is going on, has a bright future in college, can come down to a Methuen Little League event and talk to not only the students but the parents as well, because I think every parent in the room sees Sarah and Corey and says, oh, I wish I had a daughter like them, or I'm so glad that my daughters are like them. So I'm wondering what you think the effectiveness of a program like that would be, an ambassadorship program that not only reaches the students, like the one that SAD offers, you know, between the high schools and middle schools, but also one that shows parents that programs like SAD makes a big difference in a kid's life.
A minute to ponder, because I love the question and I do want the panel to speak on that. I just want to stay mindful of time. If you could just, the 2 tickets, please.
Okay, the first one's 270017.
That's yours?
Yeah, my mom has it.
Okay.
The next one is 270034. That's Fran. Yay.
You want to go get it for him?
Yes.
Did anybody?
I just had something.
Are you kidding me?
Okay, the panel is going to respond to that lovely question posed. Thank you.
So when it comes to the ambassador program that SAD offers and the ways that we try to outreach to our community, I know that when I was first given the opportunity to talk here today, I said, but what do I really know about drugs or alcohol? And I said, I mean, I see the issues going on and I understand what's going on, but I don't feel like I can really talk on behalf of it. But as I looked into it and I looked into what SAD really means and the importance of it, I realized that it's people, you know, the average person that needs to reach out in their community. We can't just ask these people who have problems and addictions to be willing to share their stories and to speak, because that's not always their comfort zone, and we all have our comfort zones. So it's very important for us to have ambassadors in the community, in SAD programs, and in athletics, in the fine arts. I think that we need people from all over to be willing to reach out on this common issue, because it's not like SAD is a club. SAD is an issue. SAD is a solution to an issue. And it's an issue that is seen everywhere, no matter where you are, in the high school, out in the community, in any single room there could be someone who has a problem with addiction. So I think it's very important to have people who may not fully understand what's going on, but are willing to help. So if we offer that to people and we provide incentive, you know, this could be community service hours, or this will benefit you, you'll make a friend, then I think it's a good thing that we stress in the community and throughout school.
You know, it was eloquently put, and I do have a job opening if you're interested. I do. I mean, I don't go on behind that. I do believe, again, in getting more people involved. I think getting more kids involved in communities, maybe committees, bringing these kids more often into these forums, like Jennifer just did, is huge. It's invaluable, because we're getting it, you know, direct from a teenager, you know, versus having some of us up here that are not so old. That was a joke. Nobody got that one. Again, the involvement, like she just stated, SAD, again, I think leads the way in a lot of that stuff. So she just said everything I probably didn't say. So I echo her.
At LMCC, we also have a youth coalition, which we will eventually expand to all 5 communities that we work with, which includes Methuen. Right now, it's the inception was in Lawrence. We have about 60 young people from Lawrence High School who are on this youth substance abuse task force. And this is exactly what they're doing, is they're learning about substance abuse prevention, they're developing leadership skills, and they're engaging in fun, healthy activities with the idea that once their leadership skills have developed, they will then recruit members from the middle schools as they're matriculating into the high schools. So it's kind of like that pipeline that will be feeding into the high schools. And this is a model that we want to replicate in the other communities that we work with as well. And it's an important thing that we're not just recruiting them around the substance abuse issue, because they're learning a lot more. They're learning leadership development. We take them to conferences. They're going to Washington, D.C., so they're getting a lot out of it. As you can see with the lovely young women to my right, there comes a lot out of leadership development. So we're not just focused on the one area. They get a lot more than substance abuse prevention. So that's something we'll expand to Methuen as well.
So at this time, we're looking for commitment from our panel. So this question here is, as a community, how can your agency or your program or establishment help youth to stay on the right track?
So 2 of the programs that we have at the Psychological Center are Pegasus House and Women's View, and both of those are treatment programs, about 6 months for ladies who are struggling with alcohol or drugs. One of the things that we focus on is not only their addiction, but once they leave our program, to be ambassadors out in the community to help other parents or youth that are struggling, you know, and to get that message out there about the dangers of drugs, alcohol, or, you know, bad choices in general. So staying positive and staying healthy. So it's not just the addiction that we work on for them, but we're working on having them be the next leaders for us.
Thank you.
I think as part of MVP ASAP, I would love to see a youth committee in that organization. Get them involved because they do think a lot better than us.
Just, I'm glad you opened the door.
Well, me personally, anyway.
But for those of you, MVP ASAP has a table back there with a sign-in sheet. You know, somebody was talking about community effort. MVP ASAP, that's what it's all about. There's a sign-up sheet there. It doesn't obligate you to anything, but if you put your name and your email, you will get notified of all the events that are going on, how you can contribute, the various types of committees that we have, which we do have a youth committee. We're open to everything, and we cover the whole Merrimack Valley and beyond. Doug's a member of ours. If you're not on our email list, please do so. You might be interested in what we have to offer. Thanks, Doug.
Especially this guy in the blue shirt. You need to sign up.
Yeah. I don't really address a lot of youth. Our services is veterans, widowers, obviously dependents of veterans. We don't get a lot of issues in our organization when it comes down to the youth demographics. However, we do address our social responsibility, and again, events like the flag football with the city. We have also, we bring in CEOs, executive directors, presidents of corporate companies or nonprofit companies that come and speak to the kids. They could be either veterans dependents or they could be just kids from the civilian sector. So I mean, we're not really doing a lot with the youth program, but we try to at least try to, again, address our social responsibility and do as much as we can with what we have for the community. So, but I will be addressing that obviously now because it is a very good point, really. And I don't have a program like that, so I need to establish one.
I'm currently in the Middleton jail, and we have a large population, an average of 1,100 inmates a day. We have a large population of 18 to 24-year-olds. So we do try to work with them around substance abuse issues, domestic violence. It depends on the inmate. Do they want the services? Are they ready? And it is a jail after all, so prevention is kind of tough because they're already there. They've already made some mistakes. But we do try to reintegrate them back into the community. We have a lot of agencies that come to the jail, such as UTEC, which services Lowell and Lawrence, Straight Ahead Ministries, and they all do education, training, and reintegration, substance abuse counseling, anything to do with their families, whatever they need, they try to meet them where they're at to help them get to one place to the other to be successful so that they don't come back, get them connected to agencies. That is a huge, huge piece of what we try to do. Because in the jail, we can't do an awful lot. It's county jail. They're doing 2.5 years or under. So they might be with us for 60 days, 6 months, 9 months. Sometimes they're with us for years. So you just never know. So it all depends on where they're at, what they want to do, what they're willing to do for themselves, and what kind of supports they may or may not have, and how can we help them best reintegrate so that they don't come back. And it's very, very hard once they start coming to jail over and over again for them to get it. It's really, really difficult. It's very, very challenging. A lot of them don't have a lot of support. They have a lot working against them from the time that they were young. They may have been born addicted. Their families are in and out of jail themselves, are, substance abusers themselves. They have their own issues. So it's quite a challenge once they start to come to jail. Once they're in a system, it's very hard to get out of the system. We have a lot of young people that graduate from DYS and come into the jail. So it's a triage, really. And we do our best to plug them into programs and connect them with services and bring outside services in So the more outside services there are that want to come in and share and reach out and help, the more successful the individual will be when they leave. Yeah.
I'm in the SAD program at the high school, and so SAD is basically a safe place where kids in the high school and in the middle school can go and do activities other than doing drugs and drinking alcohol. It gives people and kids an opportunity to do better things with their lives other than drugs and alcohol. So in SAD, we do many community service and many different activities where we just go out and we have fun. We go bowling, we carve pumpkins, we do a lot of different activities that are just fun for the kids and give them an opportunity to be safe and make friends and just a good environment.
And we have actually a long list of things that we are committed to do for Methuen and the communities in the Merrimack Valley, specifically implement life skills, that prevention education in the schools. It is difficult to get a school system to adopt a new curriculum, so we need parents and community members to say, yes, we want this. So that is one way that we can partner together. So once you start hearing about that, advocate for that in the schools. We are also going to be starting social norms campaigns so that kids know it is not the norm. Statistically, it is actually not the norm to drink, believe it or not. What we hear about is kids drinking, and that's unfortunate, but it is not the norm. So we're going to be launching a social norms campaign so that people know about the positive, good things that are happening here in Methuen and in the surrounding communities. We are also going to be, with our youth task force, creating some of these healthy activities in the community, like you were just mentioning. We're going to be doing things like scheduling dances, scheduling ongoing activities like cooking classes. That was my idea, about cook and eat. Painting, things like that for kids in the community. So all of this is in progress with our youth task force. And there was one other big thing that is slipping my mind right now. But we have 2 funding sources that have action plans that are full of things that we are doing for Methuen and the surrounding communities around substance abuse prevention and education. And they're just slow works in progress. And if anybody would like to know more about them or become involved, our brochure, the Lawrence Methuen Community Coalition, LMCC brochure, is on the table by the door, or I would love to chat with you more about it.
I just have a question, and I think that those are all great ideas, the dances, cooking classes, to get youth involved. I remember in Lawrence, they had the St. Patrick's dances when I was younger. It was like 15 years ago, and they stopped right after I stopped going, because you can't go once you're in high school, I guess, because people were bringing knives and alcohol or trying to get in after drinking. So with the dances, I think I had so much fun, and my group of friends stayed out of trouble in that respect, but there are people or kids going to be trying to go into these events using or with knives or whatever, God forbid, something were to happen. So that's just might be something, obviously, I'm sure you guys thought about it, but just to address that as well.
Yeah, we're going to have measures in place. We'll have police there.
Great.
I mean, we're certainly aware of the current situation in the community, and we're trying to provide a safe place for youth, not create another unsafe place for youth. So absolutely.
I have a question. Is there any research or is there any kind of correlation on when they stopped arts programs in schools? They cut the funding for it about 10 years ago or so, and stopped doing home ec and shop and music programs. that gave kids in school something else to do, and then it all went away. Is there any research around where it's led to now? So I'm saying my daughter's 21, she was about 10 when, you know, you had to, if you wanted your child to play an instrument, you had to pay, and it left a lot of people out of that. So it seems like now that groups like yourselves and so many other nonprofits are trying to pick up the pieces and gather up all these youth that, you know, at one time could stay at school and do things. And you know, teachers who I know that are staying after school, it's really on their own dime. You know, they're putting together clubs or they're doing things, and you know, it just seems like that there has to be something on the state level to get these things back into schools.
Yeah. I'm sure that research exists. I'm not personally familiar with it, but I'm sure it exists. The other challenge is it's really hard to, like I mentioned before, it's hard to get a school system, as much as they want and need resources, it's hard to get them to accept resources because school systems are so formal and established, and things have to be done in such a way because of their mandates that even when we do have the resources, it's difficult to get things implemented. So it is harder than you would think to, you know, we have the resources to implement this gold standard curriculum in all the schools. It's not as easy as you would think for every district to say, great, let's start doing it, because they have their own barriers around who's going to do it, when are they going to do it, you know, the amount of hours around education in each subject, and so on and so forth. Now, we run into the same problem when we're trying to get funding, if we're writing proposals for funding for extracurricular activities. It's the same problem. I have a saying at work, we can't give money away. Because when you get a grant funded for something in the school, then you have to think about who's going to be physically in the school. It can't happen during school time, it has to be after school time, what staff are going to be there, how are we going to pay the additional costs for the staffing. So it's a very complex thing when you're trying to get programming in the school, which is why it's taken longer than I thought it would to get this curriculum implemented, and why there's less of the extracurriculars, even if they're funded from different sources. It's a tough nut to crack.
Hi, my name is Jessica Finicaro, and I totally agree with you with everything that you just said. And one of the things that I just wanted to let people know is that oftentimes state representatives and senators will make a decision on whether or not they'll support additional funding off of hearing from their constituents. And we have a variety of folks from throughout the Merrimack Valley, and I wanted to let you know that every single person in this room went to www.wheredoivotema.com, found out who represented them, and went and called on Monday and left messages and saying, as a constituent, I want you to fund more funding for all the things that this panel said was great ideas that we could do. Then we actually have enough people in this room right now that we could get past hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of funding for the Merrimack Valley right now. So, and I know Doug is really great at doing that and contacting government officials. So I don't know if you can speak to how much of an impact that really does have.
Yeah, I think that it might sound awkward to call you representative, and most people probably don't even know who they are, but they're elected to represent you, to be your voice. And if you're not telling them what you want, how can they represent you? How can they fairly represent you? So it's really nice to have a comfortable relationship with your legislators. And all it takes is a phone call. And oftentimes you won't get to speak with the actual legislator, especially on the federal level. You'll end up speaking with a member of their staff. But the staff does a lot of work, and they're good to talk to. And regular calls to keep in touch. You'll eventually get some FaceTime with them, and you might make a difference. I lost my daughter a couple of years ago to an overdose, and I had never made a phone call to a legislator, and now I've been to the White House. I'm on the board of directors of the Addiction Policy Forum in Washington, and it's just a matter of being persistent, not raising your voice, and speaking from your heart, and they'll listen. And that's what they're for. They're elected to do that.
That gentleman back there.
Yeah, the last several years I've had the opportunity to talk to several mental health behavioral folks as individuals, as clinicians, and facilities as well. And for the first time 2 weeks ago, this person, when talking about mental health issues amongst all of us, and especially the youth, had mentioned in the course of a conversation about why it's so happening at certain points. And for the first time that I have ever heard, she mentioned a lack of a foundation amongst our youth, and there's many reasons for that. The one thing that kind of stuck out with me was church. I've never heard anyone mention church. Not so much from a spiritual viewpoint, although I think we can all agree that that's probably somewhat important, but from a community standpoint of sharing, creating accountability, creating responsibility. And in the church, many times there's opportunities for leadership, for the youth to do certain things in the church. So all I'm suggesting is there might be a role for any church to play in some of these programs.
Beautiful.
For the youth, as a binding foundational support. And I think that's been missing for several years.
If I can
And
address that.
I just want to say thank you, and we did have faith-based on the panel, but unfortunately could not be here today due to a family emergency.
I'll speak for him.
So he'll take care of that, thank you.
I host a monthly church service up in Plastow at the First Baptist Church of Plastow, the third Sunday of every month for people that have been touched by addiction. And it's a wonderful service. It's about 40 minutes, and then we do a potluck dinner that lasts a couple hours afterwards. And there's some great conversation, and people that don't want to do open mic in front of the whole world get a chance to talk with people that, in similar situations. And it's done a lot for the community. And I would, if you think that would be a great idea, come to our service, see what it's like, and go back and talk to your pastors or priests or whoever, and see about it. I mean, Jim Zanfagna comes to our service every month. Phil has been there several times, and it's the people that have been touched by addiction leave with a good feeling and with information in a casual and good food.
That's great, thank you.
I'm the pastor of First Congregational Church in Salem, New Hampshire, and we do have programs for youth. And I'm working with many of our families that are dealing with addiction, and how can we help the families, not only within our congregation, but within Salem, because it's a huge issue everywhere, but it's a huge issue in Salem, so we're here.
I think it's important that everybody realizes that this isn't an adversarial thing. That if you do something like, I mean, you and I should talk. I mean, you need to don't try and hoard the business. We're trying to community. We're trying to work together. I'm from New Hampshire. I don't belong in Massachusetts, but I'm here because I want to work with you people. I want to break that border down. I want us to work together. And that's how we're going to solve it, is by working together, not by saying, well, you should come only to me and see only me. That's not going to work. We have to address this issue as a community. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'd just like to mention about the faith-based. Within the jails, we have many faith-based communities that come in and do a variety of things. They have mentorship programs, they provide groups, they work with families, reintegrating people, helping them once they get outside. So it is a huge resource out there that sounds like it's a little untapped, but the jail system definitely takes advantage of it, and they are very, very helpful.
As you said earlier about like a foundation for youth, I think that it's very important that we stress to younger people. A lot of people, especially in high school, and from what I have personally experienced, the law of separation of church and state. A lot of kids, it's a misconception. So they think, oh, because you have to do with the church, or because you're part of a youth group, then you can't talk about that in school. It has nothing to do with education. Therefore, well, some people feel almost as if like they have a bubble, and because you're a different faith than me and we're in school, you can't break that. You can't talk about that here. Where the law itself was just preventing discrimination. So I think that it's important to stress to youth that it is okay to talk about church and that it is okay to talk about youth group in school. And I think that along those lines, we need to reach out to the people who want to become involved with that. Because I've noticed that handing out flyers and announcements don't always work, and it's because we're in such a fast-paced world nowadays. But if we reach out to the people that we know will be involved, and we build a foundation of people who care, if you get a strong group together, from there you can branch off and create a program that doesn't exactly have to do with church or faith, but is still taking place in a church, or still has to do with what you believe or what you think, because it gives children a chance to express themselves without feeling as if they're limited just because of their religion or faith.
Thank you.
So basically, go to church and bring your kids. Because, you know, we say we can't reach these people, but they're probably in church on Sunday, and you can probably reach them there.
Or Friday night at the synagogue.
So at this time, if there's no more questions from the audience, we'd like to close our discussion for today. I want to thank all of our vendors who have come here, and I hope that everybody in the room has been able to visit all of their tables. We have diverse vendors. We have the Haven of Hope here. We have the Psychological Center, Serenity at Summit, New Beginnings Peer Recovery Center, Mikey Short's Recovery Supplies, MVP ASAP, and Peer of Live Recovery, which is also in New Hampshire. So we are going across borders here today, and I want to thank everybody for being a part of this.
When you're done?